Mallory, welcome to Austin Next.
Hey, thank you, Jason. We love this podcast. My wife tells me this gives her more information about what's going on than almost anything else.
And I'm going to get in trouble for saying this. Your wife listens to the podcast more than my wife does. So,
no comment.
I will say it was one of the first things I was ever told when starting a podcast was that your significant other will not listen. So it was like, okay, I get it. So, well, first, I'm glad you're here on the podcast.
Thank you.
I'm glad you're here in Austin. I'm glad IntraBio is here in Austin. And I think that's probably a good place to start is tell me about what is IntraBio, what's the mission, what are you guys doing?
IntraBio's mission is very simple. It's developing drugs in the neuro space, neurodevelopmental, as well as neurodegenerative. Developing drugs that not necessarily are a cure, but have a major impact in terms of lifestyle and in terms of ongoing life. We have been lucky enough to develop and gotten approved one drug already.
That's a hurdle in and of itself in the biospace.
And we did it in about a little less than 7 years.
Okay.
Which is fairly fast.
Yeah, we're going to stop right there. Okay, so how were you able to get in a 7-year span across the finish line so quickly? Is it that you had a unique pathway? Is it, what was the difference in this case? What did you find out?
We didn't come out of big pharma or mid pharma. We just did it. And we didn't listen to everybody telling us how you can't do things in parallel and you have to do them in series. And we didn't have large groups of people creating meetings that just delayed stuff. We just got things done. I made decisions, and some of them weren't correct, and when they weren't correct, we corrected them.
So we've solved Eroom's law then.
Yeah.
So here's a question. So you're the founder of the company, correct?
Yes, I am the founder of the company, but I like to consider my scientists the scientific founders.
Well, the reason I ask that because you're the founder of the company. You've taken it to unicorn. You've gotten a drug approved. I asked then the question here when you're getting into patients, the reimbursement. This is not something you normally see, especially in pharma, right? It is almost always built to flip.
Yes.
It is like, okay, we get it to phase 1, we get it to phase 2. You're not company building, you're asset building. You're creating something that says, okay, we create a transformational product. Hey, Pfizer, hey, Merck, hey, whoever, come get it. Take the product, put it into your system, and then move on to the next thing. How is it in that case that you're able to go such a different path?
I guess it's because I've never developed another drug before. I've done medical devices, but I've never developed a pharma. I should probably go back and tell you a little bit of how this thing started, if you're interested.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I just get right in the meat and things. So like, I guess.
No, that's great. That's great. But I'll give you a little background. So, we started. I've done a couple of other companies before, and I went from my third retirement to drink tea on the English countryside on a sabbatical. And I met some scientists, and they said, how do we get a company started? And I told them how to get it started, and I got a couple of friends of mine and myself to put in some money into the company, $2 million. I've been lucky in a few other companies that have been successful, so I was able to have the funds to do that. And we did that, and we were going to hire a CEO who we had looked at hiring. And we interviewed him, we talked with him, he put together a business plan, and he was going to put in very, very good guy, smart, PhD, MD. He was going to put $5 million of overhead in day one. So he wouldn't have known how to do a startup. He didn't. And secondly, what he would have done is cause this huge infrastructure which would have slowed things down. So I called my friends up, my two other friends who we'd been in other companies together or other transactions together. I said, we just lost $2 million combined. And they said, you got us into it. You're the president, chief executive officer, chairman, CEO. Get us out of it. And that's how it all starts. My scientists are the best in the world. I mean, brilliant. I am so blessed and lucky to have people of that caliber. What we did is, what they wanted to do was develop our initial drug for the big, common, prevalent diseases, the Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. And I moved the company very quickly to the rare, ultra-rare space because of the speed of being able to do it and the cost of being able to get a drug approved. We are now moving out to a broader group of indications.
The flip, though, on that is rare disease tends to be, obviously by the nature of being rare disease, smaller market, is it's harder to recoup the cost of the drug development.
No. Well, yeah,
okay.
it is. It is if you're a big pharma that has hundreds of people doing. We have something called an orphan drug designation, which is important to get.
Right.
If you're going to do, one of my friends and one of my associates and advisors is with a big pharma, and they spend $250,000 on regulatory people, have a staff of 3 or 4 people to write a orphan drug designation. We knock it off over a weekend. It's not that hard.
Okay, so how are you? Okay.
We have 18 of them. We have 18 in both the EU and US.
All right, I'm not gonna let you get away with just saying it's not that hard.
It isn't.
I love it though. Like I love this. But so, what are you doing that's so different outside of having less? Like, how are you? Is it just? Do you see yourself hiring different?
Yes, we want, and we're looking for people here as well. We want to hire more people. We are not looking for experts in biotech. We are looking for very, very smart people that want to work hard and want to get things accomplished. What many of these companies suffer from is the paralysis of analysis, and they can't get anywhere.
So do you see? So let's take the orphan drug designation. And you have these people writing these reports, and it takes 4 or 5.
No, it's just one person over a weekend.
Right. So my question then is, so one from a, well, okay, so I have wondered this question a lot, especially when you have technology like this, like these different designations, like an FDA submission.
Yeah.
Right?
We're not talking about FDA. I was talking about an orphan drug.
No, I know. But like, I'm going to take it all the way to the end here.
That's a big deal.
Yeah. Well, it is, but there is a standard. It's a standard structure.
Yes, that's the whole point. See, let me put it a different way. Do you know many lawyers?
Yes.
Okay. If you send,
I'm very friendly with all of them. Yes.
If you send a document to a lawyer, he's going to make changes.
Yes. Especially the bill by the hour.
Right, but he's going to make changes, even
Yes.
if the changes aren't material.
Yeah.
And then you're going to make those changes and send it back, and it just takes time, costs money, and everything gets more and more convoluted.
Yes.
I rest my case.
I will not name the companies. This was early in my career. It was part of a large deal. It was 2 medical devices talking. We're deep into the negotiations, and a lawyer, it was the other side's lawyer, started having a discussion of what if they start talking to a garage door. And I was like, I swear I thought I was in a lawyer joke. I'm like, why are we having a conversation about whether they start talking to a garage door opener?
One of the things the company has always believed in, and will continue to believe in as long as I run the company, is we are interested in risk-benefit, not solely risk.
Yeah. Lawyers, regulators, all of these people should be, to your point, should be saying, tell me where the line is, help me understand it, and then the founders, business, scientists.
I'll give you an example.
I'll
give you a perfect example.
Answer.
We're talking about orphan drug designation.
Yeah.
So we have a regulatory guy said you should send it to the lawyers to look at. I said, what is the worst that can happen? They reject it.
Mm-hmm.
They don't fine you. You don't go to jail. You're not doing anything wrong. They just reject it.
Yeah. Your shareholders might be pissed off.
Why?
But that's the rejection.
Why? Of an orphan drug? I'm talking about an orphan drug.
Yeah.
You just refile it again.
Yeah.
We've never had one rejected.
No, I'm agreeing.
No, but I'm making a point. We've never had one rejected. But the worst case scenario is going to reject it. I'm just using that as an example. But again, what we look for is some of the smartest people we can find who really want to work and not just hold meetings. We have very few meetings. Our meetings are fast, and we just make decisions very quickly.
Yeah, no, where I was going with the question on the structure and the paperwork is why I haven't understood is, and maybe there are companies out there starting to get this, is why aren't we having, specifically trained LLM AIs that say like, okay, here's all my data that gotten in, one button, here's my FDA submission.
It's pretty close.
It's a structured document. We're not create these highly creative things. It's fill out the paperwork.
An FDA submission is a little bit more difficult, if I may. But
there are steps in between, right?
There's 5 modules.
Yeah.
And the answer is it's not as bad as most people make it.
So you can see that you have hiring smart people with the right tool set.
Yes.
And then say you can go faster.
There is a lady, I'll tell you, there's a lady that is now one of the senior officers and a member of the executive committee of our company, IntraBio. She was getting her master's in Oxford when I started the company, and I was looking for somebody to be an assistant to me to help things get up and running. She's an American University of Michigan grad, not in the sciences, not at all. She got her master's in strategic planning. She was offered a job at McKinsey for double what I was willing to pay her, but I also gave her a boatload of stock back then, she's going to be a wealthy young woman someday. She is a wealthy young woman already. But my point is, she said, I'm going to join you instead of joining McKinsey. Now, McKinsey is a great company, and as was assisted McKinsey in Boston. And so what she did is, she said, but I don't really know anything about pharma. So she put together about 300 flashcards with all the different terms. And she today runs our regulatory and trial area and does it better than almost anybody you can imagine. She's phenomenal. The head of our IP, we have a little over 220 patents, 11 patent families, but we have about 220 some odd patents, 220 some odd patents. We're a little pissant company.
Right.
He had retired from one of the big financial institutions. He has an undergraduate degree from Cambridge, which is a very prestigious school in natural sciences. He has a PhD in astrophysics. He's a quant.
Right.
I mean, you know the type of guy working in structured products.
Yes.
He retired, and he was driving his wife nuts. So she said, can you give him something to do? I mean, and this is one of the brightest guys you'll ever meet. And I said, I need somebody to learn all about IP and intellectual property and patents. So his name was Ian Billington. So Ian actually starts doing it. He now knows more than most intellectual property attorneys. And he's been managing our portfolio. But he also did something else that I didn't know for years, or for a couple years. He actually wanted to know about our drug. Now, you're talking about a guy who has a PhD. It's called a DPhil in Oxford, in astrophysics, and undergraduate in the sciences. It's called natural science. It's like a broad degree. He took a course in microbiology to understand our drug completely. He knows more about it than an IP attorney will know. Mm-hmm. So that's the type of people that we like to have and that are part of our company. And they're just interesting people. They're unique. They're not standard. And we don't do things standard. And that's why we're able to achieve what we have. So, and by the way, you're going to see in the next few months some more achievements that are going to be what I think very important.
So I want to focus on the talent side for a second. You're describing a lot of the people you have inside, and there's a little bit of they're very different from you say like the standard kind of pharma. How do you assess people then? How do you find them when you're talking to these people? How do you assess that they, while might not have the experience of the, as you said, kind of the people you laid out don't have the experience? How are you able to get a sense quickly that they're able to be this type of person?
When somebody wants to talk about I'm building a team and managing a team and having lots of meetings and writing lots of detailed long memos, you know they're the wrong person.
So that's the red flag. What's the green flag?
Green flag is somebody who has achieved a lot, is extremely bright, and you can tame horsepower. You can't add horsepower very easily.
So when you
that's the analogy, of course. I don't.
Yeah. So let's go early though. Like someone coming out, like let's say straight out of school. Like if you're hiring like real young.
She had graduated from University of Michigan and then went on to get a master's at Oxford.
But there's not a lot of track record. So how are you? What's the signal?
It's just gut feel.
Okay.
There's a certain type of person who just wants to get things done and make things work.
Yeah. No. Then from a long-term perspective, how do you think about those teams? And maybe it's you're not going to hold on, right? These are the people you're gonna train these kind of people, and you know what? They're gonna go do a startup. You're gonna in 4 years, they're gonna be a founder,
she's
right?
Been with me for 7.5. He's been Ian, who I just mentioned.
Yeah.
7.5. I mean, up until this past year, we had everybody was the same. Nobody even left the company, even considered leaving it.
That's right. So
we have a lot of fun. We work hard. We work 24/7, but we don't ask people to work from 9 at night till 6 in the morning, except if an emergency comes up. Mm-hmm. They have to be available. And if it's not, I mean, if they're not available, if they don't want that type of lifestyle, and it's rare that we impose like that, but they have to be available to.
Right.
And that's a mindset.
So how do you build up then the culture, the mindset? Like, how do you think about culture now in the whole kind of, we've kind of gone back and forth, the remote work, the different types of culture in these companies. Like, how do you build culture in this type of company?
You get to know people. We just brought in a terrific person to be our Chief Medical Officer, U.S. Mm-hmm. He was at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital. He was chief of neurology. Mm-hmm. He then went on to become the 10-year or so chief of pediatric neurology at Mayo. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I've known him for several years. He's an expert in these neurodegenerative, lysosomal storage diseases, these neurodevelopmental diseases that our drug is for. I asked him to come on board. But let me tell you the type of guy he is. So one of them, he was here the week before last. He started January 1st. He had to give Mayo a whole bunch of notice. That was contractually, which he did. And then he came here. And so one of my associates was asking him, can we grab breakfast tomorrow morning? He said, well, I have an 8:30 meeting, but I'm happy to grab breakfast at 6 a.m. And the guy looked at him, are you crazy? And he said, no. What happens is when we did grand rounds at 7:30, and if I wanted to talk with some of the other docs in my department, it would be 6 a.m. breakfast. So they're used to that.
Right.
And and I've known him for several years, and we've had a good relationship, and I asked him to come on board. And the case I made to him, which he now will say, is that he can help more people by working at IntraBio and letting other doctors understand our drug than he can by staying at Mayo. He can help more people and save more children. That's great to be able to do that. But you have to have the drugs and the science. And our scientists are unbelievable.
So, yeah, it is interesting. Like, one of the things about bio and health, and obviously we talked about offline, that's my background, and that's kind of what I come from. It's so much more. It is one of those things, not that I'm knocking, like, the next B2B SaaS companies, but it is mission-driven for a lot of it, like you have with defense tech and space and some of those, and it attracts. I do like where you have set up the company, and you talk about, doing things differently and speed, and maybe the possibly can finally break Eroom's law. And for those who don't know, like it's Moore's law backwards, right? You have this doubling of chip speed and cost coming down. And in the pharma and bio world, it's the opposite, is where drugs are getting more expensive to produce and slower. And we can't ever seem to crack on why that is.
Well, one of the reasons is, very simplistically, is that the FDA is built into silos, and the silos are just risk-oriented. And they don't look at anything globally in terms of risk-benefit.
Well, I also think that the FDA, and I've said this on this podcast and others, is not even structured for the time that we're in. I mean,
well, I'm not going to. A lot has to do with legislation. I was asked to testify in front of the Senate, not under oath, but I had a hearing about this with Senator Paul, who at that time was chairman of the subcommittee, and I basically said the FDA needs guidance by Congress, and they still haven't gotten that, and the guidance should be risk benefit, not just solely risk.
Yeah,
because you've talked to the FDA, they'll say, "What about thalidomide?" I've heard that 25 times from them, if not more.
Of course, one of the first things that again, do you want to tell the thalidomide story? And
you go ahead. You know better than I do, probably.
Yeah, I mean, so the origin of the FDA was the fact that thalidomide was given to pregnant women for morning sickness. And
well, it was a drug for other purposes too, and it worked very well for other purposes.
Yeah,
still does.
Yeah,
it's still available.
Yes. Yeah. So, well, it's funny because I want to go all the way back to then. I'll tell you the first thing I ever worked on when I came in.
Some water while you talk.
Yeah. So it was given to women for morning sickness. This was back in the early '60s, I think, and it had really, really bad birth defects, and it was terrible. And of course, because it was never really tested in that frame, and so then the FDA came out of that and said, we have to test these kinds of things. And it was, I think it was taken off the market across the board. And they said, okay, we got to test these things. And of course, what was interesting, then kind of my own thing, is when I started my career, thalidomide was coming back onto the market as a really powerful cancer drug.
Yeah.
So
and it's like the opioid crisis. They're vilifying the FDA, but opioids work extremely well. They did not approve the sale of it to lots of people or the marketing of it. They just approved that it works, and it does.
Yeah, and so my knock when I say about it structurally not set up for today is it is structurally set up you have a thing, you're going to approve the thing. Oh, you want to change the thing. Okay, start over, go through trials again. Oh, I want A and B to interact together. Again, we want to do that, do trials with that. When we think about things like software products, AI, it's just not built for that. They don't know how to work with that. And so it's not set. I agree with you. It's not set up for the world that we live in today.
Well, but and I agree with you, but it's just solely not their fault. It's also legislative and the executive branch's fault too.
Yeah, there's no argument there.
I mean, there's a lot. Anyway, but yes, so things can be done a lot easier, a lot better, a lot quicker, and it just has to be made into law or it has to be made into a regulation.
Yeah, so I think this is, and forgive me, this is probably a terrible segue, anyone listening. But so as you're building a different, nimble, not the standard type of, biopharma company, you moved the company from the UK here to Austin.
Correct.
When you would traditionally think, well, first you achieved unicorn status, which congratulations on that. Then you moved it here.
By the way, yes, thank you, but you ain't seen nothing yet.
I can't wait for that. When you traditionally would think of a biopharma, you don't say Austin. You would say Boston or the Bay, or secondarily San Diego or Research Triangle. What?
Okay, so we hired EY
to
take a look at various places.
Well, I'm glad you made the choice, but like, it's an interesting. I'm curious
and
behind.
You got
it,
a guy called Gary Farmer who's just phenomenal. What is it called?
Opportunity Austin.
Yeah, he's terrific. He actually came to London to visit us. Guy's phenomenal. I mean, I'm a big fan of his. We have a unique opportunity here. First of all, it is not a center, but tax wise, nobody wants to be in California now. And no one, I shouldn't say no one, there's a lot of people who are moving out of California. There's a lot of people who are moving out of Massachusetts and New York area. Research Triangle, you got a point there. And we looked at that, and that was Nashville was another place we looked at. In Florida, we also looked at. It turns out that you have a growing medical center here, medical centers here. Anderson coming. You have a lot of medicine here. That's good. You have a terrific university, and you have an environment that's unique. And I'll tell you one of the things is I'm bringing people in from other parts of the world. If we went to Dallas or Houston, it isn't as welcoming, and it isn't as easy to become part of the fabric of the community, because it's a society that's been long established. Here there's a lot more, the society's been more mobile. There are a lot of people who are old Estonians, don't misunderstand me, but there is more opportunity to become part of the community and part of the society here than there is in a lot of other places. Also, I believe the intellectual capabilities of people here are just terrific, and that's what we look for. Florida's terrific also, and it came pretty close. Once we decided on Texas, and I had never spent much time in Texas prior, and I'd never been to Austin prior to that point. But once we decided on that, we looked at different places, and we thought that this 11th largest city in America, one of the fastest growing cities, one of the most open cities for people, and one of the cities that has a lot of intellectual capability would be a good place for a company like ours. And I believe we are the most significant biopharmaceutical company here in terms of value. And let's hope we get some that are even more valuable than us that make the decision to come here, because we'd like that community. We don't use as many people. A lot of our consultants and people like that are not here. They're in Silicon Valley or in New York, but more and more we're trying to utilize here the various people and the various companies you have here.
It's funny that you said you felt the openness here. I've said before, I think one of the superpowers of Austin is that we have open networks and a culture of helping.
Yes.
And I think your observation about the kind of the, and I've been to Houston, I've been to Dallas, and
they're great cities. Don't misunderstand me.
Yeah, no, and it's funny because when I raised my hand and said that I was here in Austin, I met people in Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio without even trying. So, which is not the same. And I was born in Southern California, lived there my entire life until I moved here, and it wasn't that same kind of connectivity with like the Bay, or even though I was born just north of LA, and then slowly made my way down to San Diego. But what is interesting is I do think, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, that connectivity and that openness in Austin is due to, I think there are only two constants in Austin: change and people complaining about change. I didn't even know until, it makes sense once you actually think about it for a second, that Austin's not the original name of the city. It was Waterloo. And so the name of the city changed, everything about the city changed. And it was funny because I remember when I was, first here, there was an article I saw that somebody posted on X from the Statesman, but it was from the 80s. And they're like, too many people are moving here and traffic sucks. And then you see an article from the late 1800s. It's basically the same thing. And so there's this kind of constant it was wonderful 5 years ago when I got here, and that mantra always is like that. And so since you have that kind of constant breaking of the status quo always, that you'll have people I was on top and it broke, so I don't like that. but you kind of get that adaptability, and I think the people who have that adaptability and want it to grow. I don't know him personally, but I'm going to guess from what I've seen, for whatever 20 years, whatever the time period is. Michael Dell was the richest, most influential person in Austin, and then Elon moved here, and I'm pretty sure that Michael was one of the people who was trying to convince him to come.
And did a good job in doing it.
Right. And I don't think he had any issue with going from 1 to 2. And that kind of that type of flexibility, realizing that what's good for the city region is probably good for me, And those are the type of people that actually then help grow the region.
I couldn't agree with you more. You've basically summed it up far better than I could. And we're happy to be here. We want to grow our footprint here, and we will. Our company's kind of unique. IntraBio, besides being our structure being somewhat unique, we're doing some really important things. Our drug, we have a number of drugs, but our lead drug was approved for a rare neurological disease. But the mechanism lends itself to a whole host of other diseases, which we hope to have trials on. We've already done some work in the Parkinson's area, where it wasn't us, it's some independent people in Europe did it, using our drug, where they basically reverse the prodromal of Parkinson's, called REMS behavior disorder. They reversed the prodromal of Parkinson's by 5 years. And these were in something called DAT scans and FEG PET scans, so a biomarker. And we've now had it in 15 additional people showing clinical effect. So it's pretty exciting. And we are talking with the FDA about getting approval for, this is with our lead compound called Acnursa, for a second rare disease. And we're also talking with the FDA about doing another phase 3 pivotal trial for a third indication for a much larger disease.
So how do you see scaling the company using that same mindset? One, what do you see scaling here, like the types of people you talked about? You had people in Silicon Valley, you've got the scientists still in Oxford,
and by the way, and in Munich.
Okay. So
and Ludwig Maximilian's, and all over.
So you're all over. So one, what do you see?
Well, I brought my executive team here.
Okay, so the executive team. So then, you can of course keep hiring executives here, but what do you see the footprint of IntraBio in Austin growing to be? And then two, as you build out a different kind of the anti-traditional pharma company in IntraBio here, how do you see that scale? What is going to be different besides no meetings and
Well, we have meetings,
yeah.
but they don't last for. I know of a company that's going to go bust in the healthcare segment, and they have these off-sites for 3 days at a time.
But those are fun.
They're great. And a number of our people said, "Can we go to these meetings where they discuss healthcare in the United Kingdom, in Europe?" And I'm saying, "There's nothing to discuss about that. We are very focused. That's the whole point. We're focused. You got to focus." Many of these companies get in trouble by losing focus. We are focused. We're focused on getting this drug to patients, and secondly, increasing shareholder value. Getting this drug to patients and increasing shareholder value. That's it. And all this supplementary stuff is nice. I've never been to a financial meeting, one of like these J.P. Morgan, which you may have heard of. Never been.
I've been.
I haven't. Why? Why do speed dating? You get 30 minutes, and what's the purpose of it for us? It's nice. It's a big ego trip for the CEO.
Well, so okay, I'll play the counter to that for a minute. Then it depends on what you're trying to do.
And what we're trying to do is get the drug to patients and increase shareholder value, and we got plenty of cash in the bank. Right.
So if you're trying to raise or you're trying to get the deal done.
But we're not trying to get a deal done. We're not trying to raise.
Yeah, so there you go.
But everybody says we have to go anyway.
Well, okay, then that's a whole other problem. Yes. If you must do this because it's the thing to do,
That's what we don't do.
Then you question it. If it's
I'm agreeing with you.
yes,
Yeah, that's why we don't do it.
but yeah, I will say the one time so I've been once, and it was literally because I was working in biz dev, and it was like I have 6 or 7 companies I'm talking to, and they're all like, "Oh, well, we're going to be here. We're going to be here." I'm like, "Oh, well, this is efficient. I'm going to go and have those missions."
It's efficient for meeting people, but it's not efficient for delving into things.
Yes, I would agree with that. It was I'm glad I went from a personal perspective because I could always. It was very interesting, especially from the perspective of I actually got to go in. I actually went inside to the actual J.P. Morgan investor meeting,
which is nice.
So I got to see like that meeting plus then the Super Bowl of deal making on the outside and seeing the very different set of kind of what was going on. So I kind of want to step back for a second and away from bio because everyone knows this. Like I can go way deep on that.
It's too bad. I wish you would.
Well, I always try to like.
I know, but our drug is so exciting, and the mechanism is so exciting. You don't realize what we're going to be doing for neurodevelopmental, neurodegenerative diseases, and we have 4 other drug series, and that's something else that's interesting. Everybody wants us to develop the other 4, 2 of which are phase 3 ready. And the answer is no.
Is it
stay focused?
Was it focus? So
focus because if you don't have the bandwidth, you're going to start screwing up.
So is it people bandwidth? Is it cash bandwidth?
It's not cash.
Okay.
We get all the cash we ever want. I mean, we did a round, and we wanted a certain amount, and when we got a third more, I shut it down because we couldn't use the money, and people were just throwing money at us at the $1 billion valuation. And that's a year or so ago.
Oh, it's terrible. I don't know how you sleep at night. No, I'm just kidding.
I don't sleep well at night because I'm always worried about what am I. See, that's the other thing.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. I am not concerned about things I know. If I know something, I can deal with it, good or bad. What I worry about is what I don't know.
The unknown unknowns.
Right. That's what could kill the company. That's what could cause problems. And that's what I worry about every single day.
So how do you expand your lens to increase the surface area so you find more of the unknowns?
That's what I try to do every single day. And that's what I ask all of my team to do.
So is it expanding the influx of information? Is it expanding the way you think?
It's expanding the way you think. It's expanding the way you think when you're in the shower. Or when you're driving somewhere. It is a way of thinking. If you know something, you can deal with it. Probably. Most likely. But it's the unknowns that can hurt you.
So one thing I think that is interesting about Austin has been, and I think this is a benefit to I think you guys coming here versus say like a Boston or whatever, right? Boston is an ecosystem, is an amazing ecosystem.
It's terrific. It's terrific.
Right? It's also rather monolithic, right? There is a very specific path. There is a very way that you kind of do these things, especially in bio. So many people, I think you guys are a perfect example, myself included this way. So many people move to Austin to come to Austin. They didn't come for this particular vertical, that particular vertical, this thing. They came to Austin for Austin. Like I was just like, I assumed that bio and health was small. And then all of a sudden, like I'm here for the first couple of years and I'm like, wait, we raised $1 billion and had a bunch of unicorn. Who keeps saying it's small, right? And that's one of the reasons I kind of get up and get loud about it. And so we kind of keep having this, and the same thing. And all of a sudden, like we realize that defense tech is now gigantic here, and advanced manufacturing, robotics, and space, and all these kinds of stuff. But so we're now starting to get these narratives are starting to take hold. I think we're kind of in this new wave. I think with 2020 to 2024 was kind of the COVID wave of Austin and kind of a lot of heavyweights coming here. But I think we're now in a new wave where some of these sector narratives are starting to take hold. But the point is so many people came to Austin for Austin, which meant that you had this like really eclectic group of various things coming so that you start having really interesting creative collisions.
Yes. And that's one of the reasons we came here.
Yeah, so then that becomes one of the ways that you have, you said, like your expansion of thinking is that you kind of like, you slam into people and you're like, oh, well, that's an orthogonal way of thinking about this problem or that problem. And how do we start having one of the, anyone's heard this, is we've seen it 1,000 times. I hate anything that says Silicon XYZ. I hate Silicon Hills. I hate Silicon Beach. I hate Silicon whatever, right? Is why are you copying? Like as soon as you're trying to use that moniker, except Silicon Valley, right? That moniker, you're a pale comparison. Like you need to be your own thing, right? But I do like mental models. Like I think mental models are valuable. And when I look at the mental model that I've built up for Austin is, I think it's a combination of modern Silicon Valley, so digital technology, 1950s Detroit. We build physical things. We build, we have industrial might, and then 1920s Paris is intellectual, creativity, artistic. It's those things kind of coming together.
I never thought of the 1920s Paris, but that's very insightful.
It's funny thing is for a while it was literally in real time on the podcast. Is I had Silicon Valley and Detroit for a long time, but it really something was missing. It was clearly something was missing because of the intellectuals, because of the artists. It was the 100th episode with this Elle Beecher who does this kind of every Saturday morning these boardwalks, and she literally said, "And I'm trying to bring 1920s Paris to Austin." I was like, "Oh my God, that's the thing."
It is, but let's face it. Also, I mean, Austin's a terrific place in terms of music, comedy, food. It's getting a lot better.
Yes.
We love it. And it's good for people coming here. We go to a restaurant called Hestia quite a bit, which has got a Michelin star. We go to a place called
our barbecue got a bunch of Michelin stars.
Your barbecue did, but it's yeah. And Elon Musk's brother opened a new restaurant here, which is the Kitchen, which is terrific. The chef is a partner, and he trained in Lima, Peru, which is a major restaurant scene. I didn't even realize it.
Yeah, the restaurant scene is. Yeah, I did a whole episode on the restaurant scene. It was great.
In Lima?
No, the Austin restaurant scene was with it.
But the interesting thing is that with our drugs now, with our lead drug, and we have other drugs which we're going to explore, building out, but not until we have the infrastructure to accommodate it. We're not going to stress the infrastructure. We hope very soon to have a couple of other indications approved. We're talking to the FDA about something called GM2, which is Tay-Sachs principally, which is nothing for these poor kids. Yeah. And another one called ataxia telangiectasia, which is Lewis-Barr syndrome. And then we'll get to the really big ones like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. It's really interesting stuff. And I'm just thrilled. We've got a great team, great group of people. And it's just, every day I get up and go to work, and I feel how lucky I am.
So how long have you been here now?
Technically, we technically took an apartment, which I hadn't seen, on December 30th. We actually came here officially, not officially, we actually moved here around, I think it was April 1st or 2nd.
Okay.
Beginning of April. It took 3 months, 2.5 months, till our furniture came from London. And because everybody's moving out of London right now,
right? And
it used to be a week to get somebody to pick up. And we had to reserve it 2 months in advance. So we just got our furniture recently. And so it's. I
thought it was bad. I had to wait a couple of days when we got here before our furniture.
No, but I'm dead serious. It's getting bad there. And I'm so sorry. By the way, London's a phenomenal place. We were so lucky to have spent as much time as we did there, and we just love it. But anyway, we're here, and this is our home, and we've made a commitment that this is going to be where we're going to stay, and we're going to build out the company here.
What would you say? So obviously, London, in general, right? I considered one of like the global cities, right? When you think about like New York and these things, and Austin is clearly on a trajectory. I'm not going to say it's in the same league as like those things, but what's the like? one of the big things I say from an innovation perspective, I've noticed is it's not just scale. It's not just more companies, more dollars. That there's something else between those, between like that top tier and it's not just more. There's something else. If you're comparing like a London, a New York to an Austin, and we tripled the number of companies, tripled the VC funding, whatever, what would you say else is the gap?
I'm not trying to understand your question. I apologize.
No, it's fine. So one of the things that I noticed is when I moved from San Diego was consistently like the number 5 VC funding ecosystem in the country.
Didn't know that.
Exactly. Nobody knew that. And that was the thing that I never understood is it consistently had the numbers, but no one would ever put it in that same kind of top 4 bucket that I would consider like, San Francisco, LA, New York, and Boston. So it was this clear thing of numbers, it's not just numbers. And so when I look at those, I was always trying to figure out what's that other X factor? What's that other there's clearly some other things that separate.
You're talking about why did we come here?
Well, no, when I want to grow, when a city is a global superstar.
See, but this city is a global superstar.
Okay.
In some ways, it's a global superstar in music. It has an F1 race. It has all sorts of entertainment things. It doesn't have professional teams of the big. It has a professional soccer team.
It's fun. I've been.
But it doesn't have a lot of professional teams yet.
Yeah.
And it will get those if it builds a big stadium, something like that. So it's a place that is already world class in certain ways. Mm-hmm. Comedy.
Yes.
With Joe
quickly
Rogan.
Becoming like
the Comedy Center of America, maybe the Comedy Center of the world. So it is a superstar city, and it's just getting more and more and more stuff. And that's one of the things that attracted us because it is building.
So being number 1 in these categories.
It's not even number 1. But having superiority in a number of categories is very attractive, and it'll get the other categories as well. We spent some time in Charleston, South Carolina, when Boeing moved in there to do some manufacturing. It was only a matter, as I said, after the screw turners come, the engineers come, and the executives come, and that's what happened. Mm-hmm. So you have to start somewhere, and we've always looked to start in a place that has potential as opposed to be at a place that's almost static in its potential and going down. And we think that this is a great place for IntraBio.
So absolutely glad you guys came. Absolutely glad, I think, with what's coming next. This has been a lot of fun. I always like to end with the same question. What's next, Austin?
I think Austin has some political problems that's going to have to clear up to make it a better city, and hopefully in time it will, and it'll catapult it into the top 5, 6 cities in America.
Mallory Factor, thanks for joining the podcast.
Jason, thank you for having me, and I hope we do this again sometime.
So what's next, Austin? We're glad you've joined us on this journey. Please subscribe at your favorite podcast catcher, leave us a review, and let your colleagues know about us. This will help us grow the podcast and continue bringing you unique interviews and insights. Thanks again for listening, and see you soon.